Welcome to Wildcat Science with Mrs. Haugo. This is Human Biology, Chapter 8, Part 8, and previously on Part 7 we were talking about the muscles of the hips and the legs, and if I can get it to move forward, there we go, all at once. We talked about the gluteus maximus, gluteus medius, psoas major, adductor magnus, gracilis, and sartorius. Today we're going to be talking about the hamstring muscle group, the quadriceps, tibialis anterior, gastrocnemius, soleus, and your tendons, the iliotibial band and the Achilles tendon. So we talked about the gluteus maximus, how it extends the thigh at the hip and rotates the thigh laterally. We talked about the gluteus medius, how it will abduct the thigh at the hip joint and rotate the thigh medially. We talked about, we looked at some pictures of the gluteus medius and gluteus minimus. We talked about the iliotibial band, how it stabilizes the knee. And we talked about the psoas major, how it flexes the thigh at the hip joint. And we talked about the adductor magnus, which adducts the thigh at the hip joint and stabilizes the pelvis. We talked about the gracilis, which is another thigh adductor. It also flexes the leg at the knee joint. We talked about the sartorius, which flexes the thigh, will rotate the thigh laterally at the hip joint, rotates the lower leg medially at the knee joint, excuse me. And I promised you a little teaser, a little fun fact about the sartorius, which comes from the Latin word sartor, which means tailor, like someone who sews clothes, because they would often be sitting cross-legged while they were hemming things, and you would use this muscle when you sit cross-legged. So I thought that was pretty fun. All right, moving to your hamstrings. These are going to extend the thigh at the hip joint and flex the lower leg at the knee joint, so both the hip and the knee joint are involved. They connect the pelvis, specifically the ischium and the femur, to the tibia and the fibula. They are used in walking and running, and they are engaged at the beginning of every step. And the hamstring muscle group includes three muscles: your biceps femoris, your semitendinosus, and your semimembranosus. All right, so let's look a little bit about this. Hamstrings were, I think they were named for the common tendon that you could hold the ham hock from, so your hamstring from a pig. But anyhow, so let's look at extending the thigh at the hip joint. Okay, so if you have a flexed hip, your hamstrings are involved in extending it, so bringing it down. So you want to put your hand on your hamstrings and feel that, as well as keep it there and then flex the lower leg and feel those contract. So they connect the pelvis, the ischium, which was down here, to the femur. These connect to the femur, and they connect both to the tibia and the fibula. And you use them in a lot of different activities. As you probably know, this is a pretty common muscle group to know. And you have three muscles: the bicep femoris, which means it has two origins and it's on your leg, semitendinosus, and then deep to that, the semimembranosus. And in class, we're going to watch a little video about them. And let's talk about tight hamstrings, because that is a very common problem. So many people have tight hamstrings. You don't need to write this down, but you do need to pay attention. And if you have tight hamstrings, it will contribute to low back problems, hip and knee problems. And often they have to do with sitting, like we sit a lot in school and work, and we wear shoes. And therefore, we have underdeveloped, a lot of Western people have underdeveloped gluteal muscles, and that creates problems. So if you have an underdeveloped gluteal muscle, most often the gluteus medius, then the hamstrings are recruited actually for a posture muscle, and they're not supposed to be a posture muscle. They're supposed to be, working on the hip and the knee movements. So they're kind of like the C team posture muscles. They don't do a great job at it. And what happens is that your hips kind of tilt forward. You get an anterior tilt. And then they also move forward. And then you get more of a sway in your back. And then your shoulders go back too. And then the knees tend to get a little hyperextended, and as that happens, then these hamstrings get recruited even more and your glutes get weaker and it just gets worse and worse. So we can talk about some exercises to work on strengthening glutes and to deal with tight hamstrings. Moving anteriorly to the front of the leg, we have the quadriceps femoris, and there we go. It flexes the thigh at the hip joint and extends the lower leg at the knee joint. So it basically does the opposite of the hamstrings. It connects the ilium and femur to the tibia, and the patella is actually inside the tendon. And the quadriceps femoris is a muscle that's actually a muscle group of 4 muscles. And those muscles are the rectus femoris, the vastus lateralis, the vastus medialis, and the vastus intermedius. Okay, looking at our actions, we know that the quadriceps femoris will flex the thigh at the hip joint, and then as well as extend the lower leg. So if you get it up here, and then extend it at the knee joint. So quadriceps femoris, put your hand on your quadriceps, flex the thigh at the hip joint, and then bring it back to neutral, and then we'll have the knee flexed, and then extend it out at the knee joint and see if you can feel that contract. Looking at the quadriceps femoris, it connects the ilium and to the femur bone, and then it connects down past the knee joint to the tibia, and that big tendon actually holds the patella bone inside. We know it's a sesamoid bone, which means it's a bone inside of a tendon. And quadriceps femoris, the word means 4 heads by the leg. So it doesn't have 4 origins, it's actually 4 muscles. So we have the rectus femoris, which has straight fibers, muscle fibers by the leg, femoris. We have the vastus lateralis, which is a large muscle that is on the lateral side. The vastus medialis, which is a large muscle on the medial side. And then deep to the rectus femoris is the vastus intermedius, which is in between. Okay, let's take another look at the quadriceps. You use them for lots of things. Walking, running, going from sitting to standing, going from standing to sitting, kicking, jumping, basically everything. So we're going to watch a little video in class about this. So just looking at that common tendon that passes over the knee, and the patella bone, there would be more in it because it's actually like sheathed in that tendon. And then you can also see the attachment of those hamstrings on the back side of the knee. All right, moving down to the lower leg, we have the tibialis anterior, which will dorsiflex the foot and also inverts the foot, connects the tibia to the tarsals and metatarsals. It is needed for walking, running, jumping, and kicking. So looking at the name, tibialis, we know that it is by the tibia bone, and it is in front. It is that shin bone that you can feel on the outside of your, so not your calf, but on the outside of the tibia bone is the tibialis anterior. Okay, looking at the functions of the tibialis anterior, if it does dorsiflexion, which is pointing up, so if you can put your hand on your shin bone, on your shin muscle, the tibialis anterior, and then put your toes up, it is dorsiflexion. And then also it's involved in inversion, so bringing the side of the foot medially. So if you can bring that in, move the sole of your foot medially, and have your hand on your tibialis anterior, you can feel that flex. So the tibialis anterior connects the tibia bone to the tarsals and then metatarsals of the foot. So it's going to move the ankle joint. So you use this anytime you walk, run, jump, also kicking. It helps lock the ankle when you kick a ball. All right, moving back to your calf muscle, you have the gastrocnemius, which will help with plantar flexion. It also flexes the lower leg at the knee joint. It connects the femur to the calcaneus bone by the Achilles tendon, and you need it for walking, running, and jumping. Okay, the gastrocnemius helps with plantar flexion of the foot. So when you point your toes, so put your hand on your calf muscle, on your gastrocnemius, and point your toes, you should be able to feel it contract. And then it also helps with flexion of the lower leg at the knee joint. So if you have it extended, hold onto that calf, and then flex it, and you should be able to feel that it contracts when you flex at the knee. Okay, it connects the femur to the calcaneus bone by the Achilles tendon. So it connects all the way up at the femur bone, and then down here to your calcaneus bone by this tendon. And so it crosses two joints, so it can move the knee joint and the ankle joint. And like we said before, walking, running, jumping, it's involved in most movements. Going deep to the gastrocnemius is the soleus. Oh, and before I move on, just of interest, gastrocnemius means the belly of the leg, because it's a big, meaty calf muscle that, yep, it's got a big belly. You can see it has two fibers, and you can sometimes massage in that groove of the two fibers of it. So the soleus is deep to the gastrocnemius, and that also helps with the plantar flexion where you're pointing your toes. And it connects the tibia and the fibula to the calcaneus by the Achilles tendon as well. So it doesn't go up to the femur, so it doesn't help with knee flexion at all. It connects to the tibia and the fibula. And like I said, it's below the gastrocnemius. And then along with the gastrocnemius, you need it for walking, running, like when you push off, and also standing so you don't fall forward. It helps keep your balance. And the fun fact for the soleus is that it is Latin for sandal, because when you're wearing sandals and walking, you would be using your soleus muscle. And last but not least is the Achilles tendon, which again is not a muscle, it is a tendon. And it's going to assist in plantar flexion. So when you are pointing those toes, so it's going to connect the gastrocnemius and the soleus to the calcaneus bone. As you can see, you have your gastrocnemius, and deep to that the soleus are being connected to the calcaneus bone. And then here's the picture, gastrocnemius and soleus and your Achilles tendon. And in our next video, I'm going to tell you a fun fact about the Achilles tendon. Another cliffhanger. I'll see you then. Bye.